Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at Startup Nation Central. I'd love to welcome you, everyone, to the webinar on digital health that we're hosting today in collaboration with Advantage Austria. I'd like to kick things off with a short video about Startup Nation Central. Okay, hello. Thank you again for joining. My name is Aviv Bressler. I'm Engagement Solution Manager here at Startup Nation Central, and I'm excited to guide you through this insightful session that we have with us today. I'm going to start things off by inviting our esteemed partner, Markus Haas from Advantage Austria, to say a few words. Markus, please, the floor is all yours.
Hi, good morning. Thanks, Aviv. Thank you to everyone who's joining us today and for those who are contributing to this webinar. It's been quite a while since I've physically hosted delegations here in Israel due to the situation, but I'm very, very happy that we're at least back to those kind of events. And let me first give a short overview of what we do at Advantage Austria. Now, we are the innovation agency and trade promotion agency of the Austrian Federal Economic Chamber. We have around 100 offices worldwide, and in Israel, our office exists since 1949. We support you in Austria with finding business partners in Israel and vice versa. We're kind of the shidduch for companies. Shidduch means a matchmaker in Hebrew, and so we do everything that contributes to mutual good business relations. Now let's dive directly into digital health. What did we do in the past in order to foster collaboration in this field? So we've led our delegations to the main health maintenance organizations. Here in Israel, we have 4 of them, and they're competing for patients. And this is a very innovative and very efficient approach, I should say, and very cost efficient. And that is something which has been to the interest of Austrian delegations for a long time. But we've also visited local hospitals. You've got great hospitals here in Israel where research and development works together with patient care. And those are other examples which have been of interest. Of course, the Ministry of Health is a main driver of this development. And there's even a Department for Digital Health here in Israel, which is also very much of interest. And we're constantly meeting the leading startups in the health tech field. Only 2 days ago, there was a fair called Health IL, which also resembles the whole health tech community. And there are many successful companies, and some of them have already made their way to Austria and started an Austrian subsidiary there. And of course, we facilitate the exchange of ideas with Austrian experts, and that's something we will try to do here as well. An Austrian expert, Mr. Alexander Kollmann, is going to join in a bit, and he will give the view of Austria on the topic. Now, what's in it for Israel? We see that there's a huge discrepancy in Austria and in Israel in regard to hospital beds. In Israel, we have much less, which of course is more cost efficient, but also leads to shortages in some time. And we in Austria have very good companies that do build, construct hospitals, and medical equipment, which is point 3 in my list, is also one of the key elements or one of the key goods that Austria is delivering to Israel. Also, in terms of research and development, there is way for collaboration. I will come in a second to a call which is sponsored by the Israel Innovation Authority and the Austrian counterpart, FFG, where you can benefit from collaboration in this field. And last but not least, here in Israel, you've got a data pool of patient data, which is a real gem. And I only learned 2 days ago as well that Israeli Healthtech is opening that data pool to Austrian and international startups who want to collaborate. So that's another aspect which is very interesting and can be of mutual benefit. Now, here is the call I've been talking about. There's an agreement between the Israel Innovation Authority and the Austrian FFG to promote projects together to connect our two countries. And the first call in this field was tailored around health and bioconvergence, and it's closing very soon. So I'm not sure if it will be attracting too many people from this audience, but there will be other calls. And I think if you once identify a partner, then it can be very quickly converted into an application. And on the right, you see a few pictures of our last delegation, which happened in September. The Deputy Minister of Upper Austria, and who's also responsible for health, visited with a big delegation and was quite impressed. So without further ado, I just present the main items that are traded between Austria and Israel. Here we have Austria's exports to Israel, and you see the majority is pharmaceuticals, followed by machinery. And in the machinery, of course, you also have medical equipment and machinery. So that's just to highlight the importance the sector has for us. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions either during the webinar or after that. I pass back to Aviv. Sorry.
Thank you, Markus. Hope you feel better. We're going to continue now, and we're going to look specifically at Israel's startup ecosystem. I'm pleased to introduce Sharon Gour-Arie, who's leading the global healthcare activities at Startup Nation Central. And Sharon will provide us, as I mentioned, with an overview of the Israeli Healthtech sector, and then we'll lead to moderate the panel that we have with our very interesting experts. Sharon, please.
Thank you, Aviv. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll just start by sharing my screen in a second. We want to keep this as more integrative as possible, so please feel free to ask any question, to stop me anytime. The goal is to give you a short overview of what's happening here in Israel, what are the opportunities, to give you some insight about what's happening here in the ecosystem. So as Aviv mentioned, I'm Sharon Gour-Arie. I lead our global partnership in healthcare, meaning that we're a nonprofit organization that connect Israeli innovation to global partners. So we work with multinationals, investors, and governments from all over the world, leveraging Israeli capabilities in innovation. We do believe that we try to make the world a better place, and in healthcare it's easy. But we think there's amazing thing happening here, and we'll be happy to share and see opportunities to collaborate and really bring our two nations together to see how we can enjoy one each other. So to understand really the ecosystem in Israel, we need to say that the tech sector, the importance to the economy is not similar to any other country in the world. The tech sector is the engine of the Israeli economy. As you can see here in this slide, 14% of the workforce work in the tech sector, 18% from the GDP comes from that sector, and 48% of total annual export. This is amazing. I think it's triple what's happening in the European Union, but that shows you the importance and how serious we take innovation and R&D and part of our economy. And when we are saying ecosystem in general, We understand it's, of course, the central is a startup. We have 7,200 startup in Israel, and we don't mean two guys with a hoodie in a garage. We mean licensed IP and company listed, which it's the highest number of companies per capita in the world. So entrepreneurship and startup, this is really part of the culture that you'll find. Everyone has a cousin or a brother or a sister who are an entrepreneur or a founder. But to have this kind of ecosystem and to create one of the best innovative ecosystem, you have to have all the aspect around it. So we have 500 venture capital funds active here in Israel. This is pretty unique when you think about how small this country, at the end we're 9 million people, and we have over 500 venture capital funds active here in Israel. We have 35 incubators, so it's early stage entrepreneur program supported by the government, as Markus mentioned, and I'll show a few of them, example in healthcare in particular. We have over 400 multinational active here in Israel. This is the highest density of R&D center outside Silicon Valley. So imagine those multinational bring capital, bring knowledge, bring expertise. So this is a huge component of the ecosystem as well. And we'll specifically talk about the healthcare in a few slides. So the first one, as we mentioned, we have the highest number of startups per capita. We're very proud to say that we're second in the world in investment per capita. The first is Singapore. As for last year, we were first, but we will keep making sure that we are going up to the first place again. Israel is investing a lot of money in R&D investment, and it's the first in percent of the GDP is the highest in the world. So that's how serious we take our R&D and to really put innovation and cutting edge technology in the front. And the fact that we are four in the NASDAQ in number of Israeli company, I think shows that as a small country with a small market, we aim globally from day one. The Israeli average startup is looking at NASDAQ as the angle, as the golden startup from day one and preparing for that. And I think it's something really unique to understand because we don't see the startup looking at the local ecosystem, mostly looking globally and reaching out for partnership and investment opportunities and looking at the global market. I think it's we're very proud to say that a lot of people use Israeli technology every day in their computer, their iPhones, in their cars, and we see it everywhere. So that's great. And there's a few examples here that you can see, from food tech and mobility to agri, food, healthcare, and we see the movement and the shift between the different sector and the linkage. Imagine having a company, a unicorn from the mobility, such as Mobileye, if you're familiar, and then bring same entrepreneur, same technology to the healthcare, and we have Kollmann, which is a digital health company. So it's pretty amazing. We see the linkage between the different sector. So it's a great aspect on understanding what's happening. I will, as I mentioned, and we will dive into healthcare in particular, but just seeing the number of 2023, we saw that the Israeli ecosystem private investment has raised almost $8 billion. And it's important to say this was a tough year, not just if we're looking at the global economy. The current conflict here in Israel is still ongoing. But we do think it's still a component of the ecosystem. Investors are still keeping investment. We see mega rounds happening even nowadays, and really a big continuity and resilience of the ecosystem. So that's a great example for us to really understand how Israel importance for the global innovation. And really diving very shortly to the health tech sector. So I'm happy to say that the health tech sector is the biggest and largest in amount of company. It's approximately 20% of the ecosystem. So that show you that a lot of people know us as the cyber nation, but actually we're a life science nation. So we're very proud of that. and emphasizing that digital health is our strength, we see the amount of company and the amount of money entering those vertical in those companies. And when we say ecosystem, and I talked about generally, this is the blueprint of the healthcare ecosystem. So we have 1,600 companies, but we have different players and they're all relevant to create such a thriving health tech ecosystem. So first of all, the government, and they do have an important part, not just allowing it, but enabling it. And there's a difference, and putting resources and being part of initiatives and promoting early stage entrepreneurship and being at the different place where they can leverage what Israel has to offer to the healthcare system. We have over 75 hubs dedicated for healthcare. This is pretty unique and incredible. Imagine as in an early stage entrepreneurship, you have so many different programs that you can join to really enjoy that. We have over 200 VCs active in healthcare. Some are specialists such as aMoon, and we have Ohad here joining us soon to share as one of the leading and the biggest health tech VC here in Israel. We have the health organization, which are an incredible component because those are the bedside and the data side of those startup. Of course, the academia and the important, and I think interesting, I mentioned in the beginning, we have a lot of multinational, they're doing healthcare in Israel. So all the pharma company, all the medical device company, but even the tech companies are doing healthcare in Israel. So you'll see, for example, AWS has a healthcare team sitting here working with startup, NVIDIA, Google, Facebook, all of them are doing healthcare in Israel. Microsoft opened their first AI R&D center for healthcare globally in Israel. So they understand they want to be part of the ecosystem. They want to enjoy the innovation and being part of what's happening here. A bit about Israeli healthcare system, because it's important to understand what makes this special recipe. First, we have a good healthcare system, public. We have a national health insurance. That means that each one of the citizen, as by law, is part of one of the 4 HMOs, so very centralized. And the HMOs are pretty different because they are the provider and the insurer. So we get both from both sides. And as Markus mentioned, what made us one of the best healthcare system in the world is the fact that we have EMR, and electronic medical record and data, on all of the population from birth to death in the last 25 years. So a lot of data-driven companies, a lot of you'll see the data is something very important. And that, by the way, the fact that Pfizer chose Israel as the place for the beta site for the coronavirus vaccine, because you have good healthcare system, easy to deploy the operation, you have data to monitor, and we're kind of an island economy. So this is a good example in showing all the opportunities here in Israel. In addition to a very tech-driven ecosystem, you will hear AI, machine learning everywhere. This is what we're good at. So combining those together, I would say, though, there's really the secret sauce of what Israel has to offer. A bit about the numbers, as I mentioned, looking at the round, the investment side, digital health is leading in the number of round, number of companies. As you can see in the slide on the right, our health tech ecosystem is pretty young. Almost half of them are still in R&D stages. So I think this is a good opportunity when identifying potential for both sides, is to see that we're a small ecosystem, very B2B oriented. It's very small companies. So though there's a criteria that really identified what we're doing here. And as I mentioned, I said AI, so it's not a buzzword. It's actually something that we see all around. AI is the most funded technology, by the way, in Israel in general, not only in healthcare, but it's relevant to digital health as well. We have over 470 healthcare startups using AI tools. Over 50% of the total sector funding privately went to AI companies. So this is, again, something that we see it will remain. We don't see it going anywhere, just increasing. And knowing how to connect those two together is really a strength that we see here. Here you can find a few examples of a health tech innovation program happening here in Israel. I will mention just two, just on the sake of time. The first is Ion Lab, which is a AI innovation lab for drug development, partnering AstraZeneca, Merck, Teva, and Pfizer together with Amazon and two global VCs that are doing a venture creation model for creating startup with scientists from all over the world on using AI for drug development. So imagine bringing four pharma company to do innovation together. But we're a big believer that innovation is best when shared. And I think Israel is a good place for partnership. And we see a lot of example for that. Another one is Starfinder Lab. Again, aMoon is, Ohad will be here with us today in the panel now. aMoon is collaborating with Roche Pharmaceutical to accelerate and identify an early stage company. So we have a pharma company bringing their challenges. You have a VC, global VC, bringing the market need and the understanding and collaborating together. And I think we see great opportunities when both sides bringing their knowledge and expertise. And very shortly about our finder, just so you can enjoy everything that's happening here. Startup Nation Center, as I mentioned, we're a nonprofit. We created a platform called Finder, kind of a Crunchbase speech book, if you're familiar, but dedicated only for Israel. And it's free of charge, up to date, where we map the Israeli ecosystem. So very easily, you can search any company in any sector, use any tags, any filter, and that will enable you to access what Israel has to offer. You can contact the people, you can get information about each one of the companies, investors, hubs. So it's a great tool. We invite you to sign up and use it. It's very easy to use. And if you have any other question, I'll be happy to take it or elaborate on after the panel. So with no further ado, I'll be happy. If you have any question, please, you can feel free to write it on the chat. If not, we will move forward to our panel. So Viv, can we move, can I start? Great. So I'm very happy to invite our first panelist to join us, where we'll discuss on how we navigate innovation, infrastructure, and data in digital health. So please welcome Alexander Kollmann, Global Health and Telemedicine expert from the region in Salzburg, and an HIE Austrian Management Board member. So Alexander, thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody.
Next, we have Ohad Hollander, investment associate at aMoon Fund, as I mentioned, the largest health tech VC active in all different aspects of healthcare in Israel. Ohad is leading the investment opportunities and due diligence, supporting the fund's portfolio with a lot of focus on digital health. So thank you, Ohad, for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
And last but not least, I'm very happy to invite Dr. Michal Katz, CEO and co-founder of Kahun Medical, a digital health tech company providing evidence-based clinical AI tools. And in her spare time, because being a founder is not easy, she's also still practicing doctor and still serving as in one of the biggest hospitals here in Israel, in Ichilov. So Dr. Michal, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you, everyone. Nice to be here.
So let's, with no further ado, let's start with the first question. I talked a bit about what are the strengths of the Israeli technology ecosystem and what we have to offer. How would you see it complement Austrian digital health landscape, how we can connect? Alexander, would you like to address it first?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the very interesting and impressive presentation on how you work together in Israel and in the healthcare system. As maybe many of you know, we have in Austria a very strong IT infrastructure in the healthcare systems. We have a national electronic health record for 10 years, not for 25 years, as I have learned before. But this infrastructure is a little bit closed, yes. And what I've learned in the slides from your presentation before, what we can learn is how to build an ecosystem around this IT infrastructure, because just implementing IT solutions is not enough. Yeah, you have to build a community. You have to build a community between the public and the private sector. You have a infrastructure or a community, an ecosystem between routine care and research, between established companies, for example, in the healthcare system, big companies who are providing a very robust IT infrastructure, and very flexible and agile startups. And I think this is what we can learn from Israel, how you manage this very heterogeneous ecosystems with a lot of players, with a lot of different goals. And I think this is what we can learn. We can what we have also seen in Austria is how fast you can develop new products. For example, new AI solutions or home monitoring solutions. In Austria, we are a little bit slower. It takes years because we have a lot of laws, we have a lot of restrictions, and I think these are the strengths of the Israel's tech ecosystems, what we can learn from.
That's great, and I totally agree. I think having the government, having VCs, having those components working together, it's really the best angle. Ohad, would you like to add something regarding that question?
Yes, I think you've mentioned it, and probably we're going to talk a lot about the EHR system in Israel. I think that's one of the maybe the most unique aspect in the healthcare in Israel. So we have two portfolio companies that actually was built based on the Maccabi, which is one of the largest HMOs in Israel, that was built based on the data mainly from the EHR, but with maybe an addition of other tests that we are using and are recorded in the EHR, like imaging tests, blood tests, clinical notes, and stuff like that you can use and implement and build based on that. Different diagnostic companies, digital health companies who are trying to accelerate clinical trials, etc. And also, I learned now that Clalit actually is willing to collaborate with people from different countries. So I think that could be a great opportunity, both for startups to work with Clalit, but also for organization in Austria to try and better understand how they do that, and to get a real sense of that. Also, I think, in terms of collaboration and ways there are maybe could be complementary, I think Israel is very strong in the building companies from 0 to 1. And I think that's a big part of building a venture. And I think, in a way you could collaborate with Israeli founders and try to identify where Austria can build new technologies, and then to collaborate. And the last thing, that Israel is very strong in the B2B side. For many years, maybe cyber is the most significant part, but I think, the ability to build strong B2B enterprise companies is very unique. And, even if just, to take these companies and to bring them to Austria once they are ready to the European market, I think that could be another way to collaborate.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ohad. I think understanding what we know and what we don't know, and understand how we go from partnership from that. For example, as a B2B nation, we don't know the end player, the end market. So collaborating with other partners that can do that, that's the best match that we know from our experience. So it's a very important aspect of that. So thank you. Now I will be happy to move to Michal as the doctor, the entrepreneur, and doing both of them together. And it's always impressive to see, and it's incredible to see innovation from inside the system. Could you please share with us a bit the main challenges you as an Israeli digital health startup facing, including regulation, data access? Because we said all the nice and shiny thing, but it's always challenging and there's still obstacles. So we'll be happy to hear.
Sure. Thank you, Sharon. And I think it's important to touch on these points that are basically the challengers or the obstacles for these amazing collaborations that you've discussed before. I mean, for a startup company, you can probably appreciate that there are processes that are very time consuming and also resource intensive, and therefore, and especially on the challenges, Sharon, that you just mentioned, regulation wise and data access, these are processes take a long time and require expertise. And I mean, I love how you describe the Israeli ecosystem and how Israeli digital startups have the ability to work globally. We don't understand really how that capability came to nature, but probably relates to the strong ecosystem, healthcare ecosystem that we have in Israel, and our ability to understand the differences and challenges working with US market, working with European market, which are of course very diverse between the different countries in Europe. So I mean, regulation wise, I can speak from our experience, from our perspective, but also what we see in other digital startup companies working with these different regions. There are very high regulatory requirements. This regards both the security and the privacy, given the nature of healthcare, the conservative nature of this industry, and the sensitivity of the data, of the patient data. It is really paramount that companies are align themselves according to these different regulatory requirements. From our experience, we work with the US market mostly, but and therefore, of course, we are HIPAA compliant, but I've also gone through the process of GDPR compliancy in Europe. I can tell you that, again, as a startup, from the perspective of running a startup company, you have to make sure that the opportunities make sense market-wise, business-wise. But then it is possible to go through these processes. Again, as I'm sharing from my own experience. I think maybe we'll just touch a little bit about the data, patient data, accessing the data. It's very different between different regions. The ownership of the data is different. It could be part of the hospitals or HMOs, as we see in Israel, but also it could also be data that you need to access from the EHR vendors themselves that you work with. And again, I think it's a challenge, but it's possible to overcome these challenges. The key is to understand the specific requirements of the different regions and apply with them. And therefore, once you understand and adapt to these requirements, you're able to gain trust and access to the knowledge, access to the data, and bring your solutions to these regions.
So let's tap a bit about that, because you said something that it's interesting, and I don't know if everyone knows that, but the Israeli market is really focused on US, the majority. That's where the end game that we're looking at. So some will say that it's easier to do it in the US than in Europe any day, and we know that, but we do want to set the barrier and see how we can collaborate more. So from your experience, what do you see the opportunities to go into the European market for startup in comparison to the US, for example?
Okay, so again, as you just mentioned, I mean, Israeli companies have a tendency to go to the US market, but I will try and emphasize the comparison between them, because I mean, again, an example of a company that works both ways. Let's start with I think the key is the cultural nuances that are very different in the healthcare systems between these two regions. I think, again, the key is to being able to understand these cultural differences, and the preferences are also different in the healthcare industries, and adapt to them. And this is how it's possible for digital companies to adapt themselves and tailor their solutions to the needs of these different markets. Again, from our perspective, working in the US market seems to be more natural, as there is a path that that other companies have already paved. So there are many, the network is huge. I think in Europe, because Europe is multiple countries, each of them have, you know, different languages, different cultural,
Different health system.
yeah, completely different health systems and incentives. And so it sounds like it's a challenge, but again, it could, I mean, it's also an opportunity. Building a startup solution that you are able to adapt and tailor to specific needs of these different countries is actually an opportunity from the startup perspective. Yeah.
That is great. Thank you. Next, Ohad, as the investor hat here in our panel, what would you say are the strengths and the challenges for both European and Israeli companies nowadays in our current landscape? And if you can share some example as well.
Yeah, so, you know, I think to speak about Europe in general, it's tough because, you know, obviously the UK is very different than Germany, and you know, France is very, very different than Austria. I think I would try and speak broadly maybe in the beginning, and then maybe try to get a few examples. But I think what you just mentioned also about Austria, the fact that they also have the EHR data, which is quite organized. Also in the UK, it's way better than the US. The ability to access to data, the ability of patient to move the data to the different provider. In Israel and in Europe, it's way easier than in the US. In the US, it's a mess. It's very problem to get to the data, and longitudinal, it's even harder. So that's one thing that is an advantage in Europe and Israel. I think there are very good scientists and research in both Europe and Israel, which is less competitive than in the US. In the US, you have the leading institutions that, you know, you have many investors that are trying to get into the, you know, the most famous one, to find the researchers that have like a few companies. And in Israel and Europe, you have more opportunities in that sense. As an investor, I'm saying that. And in terms of challenges, I think the market size is usually a challenge. And here I can be more specific. So for example, Germany, it might not be as big as in the US. There are some advantages in terms of the DIGA policy, which is helpful in terms of digital health, you know, the ability to get reimbursement. But in terms of market size for us as an investor, that's why we usually not focusing on Israel from very early days. And we are trying to see if there is an option to get into the US market. I will say that, you know, in some cases, we have a company called Ibex, for example, who's doing AI for pathologists. And in that case, you know, for example, the fact that you can go to different European countries and the implementation look quite the same, the incentives. I'm also regarding what Michal just said, the incentives are quite similar in that aspect. So I think in that case, you know, to work with a Swiss hospital or to work in the US, it's kind of the same. But, you know, it's a matter of also resources. And usually a lot of companies decide to go to the US. Also, I think, you know, it might be also an advantage, but I think it's very the incentives in this market, in the European one and in Israel, are quite different than the US. So in some ways, you know, the American willingness to pay is sometimes higher, and, you know, the pricing is higher. On the other hand, I would say that, you know, there are a lot of stakeholders in the US, and it's very different than, you know, most European and Israel. And it's very difficult, you know, sometimes the payer is the one paying, but he's not the one who's giving the service. And the patient is not necessarily the one who's paying.
And the insurance company in the middle.
Yeah, it's very complicated. So on the one hand, I think in terms of the willingness to pay is higher, but on the other hand, it's quite challenging to convince all these different stakeholders to use your product.
Could you elaborate a bit? We know that the privacy matters are a bigger issue. I won't say it's important for everyone, but in particular in Europe, we hear it more. Have you had experience in hearing stuff around that as well?
So I can give one example of one company that we work with from very early stages, that they got access to EHR data in Israel, which wasn't easy, but I would say it was easier to do that. And the way to get into the European data was through collaboration. Mm-hmm. So it was, for example, they needed access to samples from liver biopsies and you know, NASH samples in Europe, and the ability to do that in order to validate the signatures they found for this kind of diseases was through collaboration, by the way, not just with European, but also with US researchers. So I think there are ways to get into these data sets and stuff like that, but it's for Israeli companies, it's more difficult. I don't know how it is for Austrian companies to get access to these data sets, but obviously privacy is a bigger problem in Europe than in the US, but still, you know, in each country you have these different challenges.
Sharon, sorry, and Ohad, I'm being Israeli and jumping in just now because I think I have something to contribute. Now, I've also worked in the US, and I also know that the US is not only one economic space, but 50 different states. So even there, it seems easy, also from the Austrian perspective, to approach this market. In the end, it's not that easy. But since this webinar is also about business opportunities, I wanted to mention the following. I think that the advantage of Israel and Austria collaborating is that you guys have the perfect software development. You're very advanced in AI. You have those data pools. So this capability combined with the Austrian engineering ability and being more focused, I'm not saying only, but more focused on the hardware part, I think that can be an advantage, or at least one that I often see in our work. And also, what should be seen is that Austria can be a small test market if you want to venture into the DACH region. So relatively easy to navigate, since it's only 8 million people, and yeah, so maybe keep that in mind if you're talking about approaching also Europe and Austria.
Well, that's a great input. Thank you for jumping in. It's always, I told you, feel free to interrupt anytime. Alexander, maybe that's a great point to take it to your side as an expert really in your field. What would you say are the challenges and opportunities from the Austrian side, regulation-wise, data for the startup now?
Well, I think most of the important things have already mentioned. The first thing is to get access to the healthcare system, because the Austrian healthcare system at the moment is very regulated and very closed. Yes, as I mentioned before, we do not have such kind of ecosystem where you can, as a startup, can take part of this ecosystem, have access to the data, or and so on. Data access is very restricted. In the preparation of this webinar, I found 25 laws in Austria who restrict the data access, and there were no law or no guideline for startups which gives you an advice who you can access the data. What are the rules to have this data? And what we can do is collaborate. This is also what was Markus has mentioned before. Build a strong connection between Austrian and Israeli startups. Do projects together, and so we can build an ecosystem, a win-win situation for both sides. And this could be a good entry point for the Austrian market. What I also agree is that Austria could really be a good entry point for the European market, because we are very small, and we're good. We have a good connection. We have 9 federal states, which are a little bit different, but similar. We have also a different landscape. We have countrysides. We have urban regions. So we have a lot of hospital, university hospitals. We have pharmaceutical companies, and we are a small country, well organized, with a good infrastructure, and I think this could really be a good entry point for collaboration. And if we find two companies who we can link together, I think this could start a good starting point for projects in Austria and also for the in the European Union.
As one tiny country to another, that's for sure. That's always a good entry point.
Yes.
Great. And I would double click on what you said, and how would you think we can bring Israeli and Austrian entities to better collaborate for mutual benefits? Which area will bring interest to explore together? How would you... We both agree that partnership is key. So how would you see that?
Well, we were very happy in Austria to have a kind of e-health strategy since the last year. We're working on a strategy, and when we focus on the goals of this strategy, for example, to develop digital tools, to put the focus on digital healthcare solution first before the patients enter to the healthcare systems. This could be very interesting solutions in telemedicine, in the field of telemedicine, in the field of AI to support the physician and the healthcare providers in analyzing this huge amount of data, because this is one of the problems in Austria with the Austrian electronic health record. Now we have a lot of data, and when the physician enters this electronic health record, he gets a lot of data from different organizations, and we have to develop tools to guide the physicians and the users through this data, to use AI, use methods from the big data domain to build tools to support the physicians. And in the end, we have a shortage of staff, yes, and we should focus with our physicians and all the nurses on the really important time operating with the patient, and digitalization should help them to spend more time on a patient. And if you find such kind of projects together, I think you have the same opportunities and problems in Israel, where we can focus on such small projects, and this could be a good entry point for collaboration in future.
That's great. Thank you so much, Alexander. We actually have a few questions from the audience. Both of them are to you, Dr. Michal, for joining us. So first of all, they asked that I mentioned in the presentation that one of the Israel's strengths are the entrepreneurial doctor. What are the reasons? In Austria, we often see a rather large gap between medical professionals and entrepreneurs. And follow up for that, what helped you most in becoming a founder in additional to a medical career? I think it's a great angle to hear from you, so we'll be happy if you could elaborate. You're muted, so if you can, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes, I think I'm very happy that I have the combination of having a background of technology and being a software engineer. I guess before starting the path of medicine has led me to where I practice personally today. I started off in software engineering, only then trained as a physician, specialized in pediatrics. But I think throughout the whole process, I had a different perspective, and being able to challenge and question the way that medicine is practiced helped me to understand what kind of tools need to be developed to help us make better decisions at the point of care, and help us give better care, better medical care for our patients. But I'd like to touch on something that Alexander said. I think we talked a lot about the differences between the different regions and that we work with around the world, Israel, US, and Europe. I think there are, again, something that Alexander said before, the challenges of healthcare industry are the same everywhere. It's the shortage of staff. It's the ever-growing capacity and volume of patients. It's the inefficiencies that the EHRs bring to the way that we practice medicine. I think this is the glue that enables companies to bring solutions to all these care facilities around the world, and focusing on where we can help. This is the drive. So I hope
it's a perfect answer. And I would just from
go
my
on.
side. Yes, go
Yeah.
ahead, Markus.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I just wanted
No,
to
go
jump
ahead,
in
go ahead.
because I talked to someone in Hadassah, a medical center in Jerusalem, and they said in Biohouse, they see that not only doctors are the founders of medical startups, but mathematicians and statisticians, because they understand the algorithms better. And I mean, once you understood the problem and how the path that you need to follow to build the mathematical model is even more critical than being a doctor. Sorry, I'm not saying that this is not true. I'm just quoting someone from the industry who said that in recent days more non-doctors are also founders of medical startups, and that this is a possible way.
And I think that's the advantage in a small ecosystem. Again, that's a common ground for both our country. Entrepreneur doctor has very easy access to a venture capital or entrepreneur in the tech sector. So bringing those together will enable that. And I will add, in addition to what Michal mentioned, that each hospital in Israel has an innovation center from within. We know that in Hadassah, we know that in Ichilov, they are a part of the ecosystem. For example, the CEO of Ichilov, Professor Roni Gamso, I think is one of the biggest believers in innovation, and he's saying we need to do healthcare different than what we did 100 years ago. So when you have leadership inside of hospital, enabling innovation and believing and seeing that as their own goal, it's not enough to have a connection with Amazon. You actually have to give time to the doctors to do that and enable them to do and bring data and bring infrastructure. So I think, again, it's leadership a lot of time and understanding the importance of that and identifying the potential. But seeing example like Michal of doctors who are still practicing and doing very hard being an entrepreneur. We all know that it's very, very hard being a CEO. It's incredible, and I hope we'll see much more because that's how the thing will change and we'll bring it to better option. We do have to wrap it up. So I will start by, again, thanking everyone for joining us. If you have any other following question, you want to talk to each one of the panelists, and I encourage you, we have our email. We will share it on the chat here. But we think it's a great start for both nations to see how we can leverage each other capabilities to really, at the end, make this world a healthier place and leverage innovation. And I think we all agree that through partnership, that's the best way to do it. So any final word from our panelists, if you have something to say?
Well, I would close it off with a business opportunity for our Austrian listeners. So since we have so many multinational research centers here in Israel, we've seen also in the past that a way to get to the decision makers in those big companies, one of the very successful ways is to go through those research centers, because they are looking for the solutions for their headquarters and they know whom to address it over there. And it's easier to go through the, I'm just saying, GE Healthcare Innovation Center in Israel than to write directly to the US and search for a contact there. So that's also one of the advantages of having a small local ecosystem.
Yeah, and we will be happy to help if you have any connection, you're looking for someone in particular. I think the Finder platform, and Aviv, if you can share our link to the platform, it's very easy to use. We have Markus' team, we have us, we'll be happy to elaborate and really help you guys tap into the Israeli ecosystem and understand the opportunities. And we look forward to working together and hopefully see you soon, maybe in Israel and on the other side. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be happy to discuss further after that. And thank you for our panelists. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Sharon. Thank you to the
Bye-bye.
panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. If you're from it's Austria, Germany, Israel, all our logins. You will get a follow-up email with a lot of this information, with some slides, with the recording as well. And please feel free to reach out to the Startup Nation or to Advantage Austria with any follow-up questions. And we hope to have many more opportunities like this in the future. So thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.